What if the stones around us were not just silent monuments, but keepers of a secret conversation, one that spans continents and millennia? Picture standing before the Great Pyramid of Giza, or tracing your fingers over the weathered spirals carved into a megalith in Ireland. Each mark, each alignment, feels deliberate, almost intentional, as if the builders left behind a message waiting to be understood. These ancient structures, scattered across the globe, share something uncanny, a hidden language written not in words, but in geometry, astronomy, and stone. From the sun-drenched temples of Egypt to the mist-shrouded ruins of Peru, a pattern emerges, one that hints at a shared understanding, a forgotten code that connected humanity long before modern maps or languages existed. It's a mystery that has captivated explorers, scholars, and dreamers for centuries. How could cultures separated by oceans and eras design and build with such startling similarity? How did they achieve precision that sometimes rivals our own without the tools we take for granted? These questions tug at something deep within us, a longing to reconnect with our ancestors, to hear their stories, and to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that rewrites what we thought we knew about human history. This isn't just about archaeology or ancient engineering. It's about rediscovering a part of ourselves, a shared heritage written in the most enduring medium imaginable, stone. In this video, we're setting out on a journey to decode that language. We'll explore how celestial events were captured in alignments, how sacred geometry repeats across cultures, and how symbols carved into rock might carry meanings we're only beginning to grasp. This is more than a historical deep dive. It's an invitation to see the world through the eyes of those who came before us, to listen for the whispers trapped in stone, and to wonder, what wisdom did they leave behind for us to find? So settle in, open your mind to the possibilities, and let's unravel one of the greatest enigmas of our ancient past together. To truly grasp the scale of this mystery, we must travel back to a time long before written history, to the very cradle of civilization itself. This journey begins in a remote corner of southeastern Turkey, at a site that has single-handedly forced archaeologists to rewrite the human story. Known as Göbekli Tepe, which translates to Potbelly Hill, this sprawling complex of carved stone circles isn't just old, it's staggeringly ancient. Carbon dating places its construction around 9,600 years before Christ, which means these towering T-shaped pillars were being erected a staggering 11,600 years ago. Let that sink in for a moment. This is 6,000 years before Stonehenge was even a concept, and a full 5 millennia before the first pyramids of Egypt rose from the sands. What makes Göbekli Tepe so utterly revolutionary is that it completely inverts our traditional understanding of human progress. Conventional wisdom has always told us that agriculture came first. The story went that humans learned to farm, which led to settled communities, surplus food, and only then, with leisure time and specialized labor, did they develop complex religion, society, and monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe shatters that sequence. Here we have the world's first known mega-temple, a monument of breathtaking scale and sophistication, built by hunter-gatherers. These people had not yet domesticated animals or plants. They were nomads living off the land, yet they somehow organized themselves to quarry, transport, and erect limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons, carving them with exquisite reliefs of animals: foxes, scorpions, vultures, and lions. This wasn't a settlement. It appears to have been a purely ritualistic center, a sacred destination. It suggests that the human impulse to create grand structures for spiritual purposes may have actually been the catalyst that eventually led to agriculture and settled life, not the other way around. This site is a profound question mark etched into the landscape, challenging everything we thought we knew about our ancestors' capabilities and motivations. But the mystery doesn't stop in Turkey. This same era of awakening, often called the Neolithic Revolution, saw similar sparks of genius igniting independently across the globe. Around the same time Göbekli Tepe was in use, on the other side of the world in what is now New Hampshire, USA, a different kind of mystery was taking shape. The Americas boast their own ancient enigmas like Mystery Hill, often called America's Stonehenge. This site is a complex network of stone walls, underground chambers, and astronomically aligned standing stones. While its exact age is hotly debated, with some structures possibly dating back 4,000 years, it shares that same enigmatic quality, a purposeful, precise arrangement of massive stone that seems to serve a function beyond the merely practical. It speaks to a parallel human experience, a widespread desire to shape the very earth and stone to human will and understanding. The fundamental question that arises from these sites is perhaps the most compelling. Why? Why would these early peoples, with their seemingly simple technologies, invest such immense, almost unimaginable effort into moving mountains of stone? The answer might be more profound than simple ritual. Many researchers now believe these structures were not just temples but repositories. Think of them as the hard drives of the ancient world. In an era before paper, before parchment, even before widespread pottery, how do you preserve critical knowledge for future generations? You encode it into the most durable medium available, stone. The precise alignments of these sites with the solstice sun or certain stars could have served as a perpetual calendar, ensuring that agricultural knowledge or migratory patterns were never forgotten. The geometric ratios and repeating symbols found across continents could represent a nascent universal language, a way of conveying complex mathematical or astronomical concepts that were essential for survival and societal cohesion. By building to last, they were creating a permanent record, a library in stone, ensuring that their hard-won wisdom would endure long after their oral traditions might fade. This foundational era, from the hills of Turkey to the forests of New England, set the stage for a global phenomenon, hinting at a shared, deep-seated human need to communicate something vital across the vast expanse of time directly to us. Moving from the awe-inspiring scale of these early monuments, we find their true genius lies not just in their size, but in the intricate and deliberate patterns etched into their very fabric. If the massive stones are the hardware of this ancient system, then the geometric patterns are the software, a universal language of shape and form that seems to transcend culture, era, and continent. It's a language that speaks in circles, spirals, and grids, a visual code that appears with startling consistency from the rolling hills of Scotland to the high plains of Peru. This isn't mere coincidence or simple decoration. It points to a profound and shared understanding of the fundamental principles that govern our universe. Consider the circle, perhaps the most ubiquitous and powerful symbol found at ancient sites. From the great rings of Stonehenge to the circular enclosures of Göbekli Tepe, the circle represents wholeness, cycles, and eternity. It has no beginning and no end, mirroring the cyclical nature of life, the seasons, and the heavens themselves. But the use of geometry goes far beyond simple symbolism. At sites like Newgrange in Ireland, we don't just find a circular mound, we find a precise mathematical understanding. The inner passage and chamber are designed with such accuracy that on the winter solstice, a single shaft of sunlight penetrates deep into the heart of the tomb, illuminating the central chamber for just 17 minutes. This incredible feat required an advanced knowledge of not only astronomy, but also of complex geometry to calculate the exact angles and alignment needed. The circle here is not just a shape, it's a functional component of a sophisticated cosmic clock. Then there's the spiral, another motif that captivates with its frequent and widespread appearance. You can find it swirling on the stones of Newgrange, carved into the rocks of the American Southwest by the ancestral pueblones, and etched into the tombs of ancient Malta. The spiral is often interpreted as a symbol of journey, growth, and expansion, the path of life, the swirling cosmos, or even the inward journey of consciousness. But it also represents a breathtaking grasp of mathematical concepts that we often think of as modern discoveries. The Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones, creates a perfect spiral pattern known as the golden spiral. This ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, is found throughout nature in the arrangement of sunflower seeds, the pattern of a nautilus shell, and the formation of galaxies. Astonishingly, this same divine proportion, also known as phi, is meticulously encoded into the dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The ratio of the pyramid's height to half its base perimeter is remarkably close to pi, another fundamental constant, while the proportions within its chambers align with the golden ratio. This mathematical precision, achieved thousands of years ago, suggests the builders were not just artists or laborers but true mathematicians and astronomers, embedding a universal constant into their work as a way of connecting the earthly to the cosmic. This idea of a universal design principle is further supported by the work of researchers like John Mitchell, who dedicated his life to studying what he called sacred geometry. Mitchell argued that these recurring patterns, the circles, the grids, the specific ratios, formed a symbolic language. This language wasn't meant for mundane communication, but for conveying deeper spiritual truths and cosmic harmony. It was a way for ancient cultures to express their understanding that the same geometric rules that order the heavens also order the world around us, and by extension, ourselves. A grid pattern found on a stone in Scotland might not just be a map of local fields. It could be a representation of the cosmic order, a mandala symbolizing the interconnectedness of all things. The repetition of these forms across isolated cultures is perhaps the most compelling evidence for this hidden code. How else do we explain the appearance of the same complex geometric principles in the Parthenon of Greece, the pyramids of Egypt, and the mandalas of Tibetan Buddhism? It suggests a shared human intuition for the patterns that underpin reality, an intuition that found its most permanent expression in stone. This geometric language became the ultimate cross-cultural bridge, a silent testament to a time when humanity might have been more connected to the rhythms of the universe and to each other than we can easily comprehend today. This celestial dimension takes our understanding of the ancient stone language to an entirely new level, transforming silent monuments into dynamic, functioning cosmic clocks. If geometry provided the vocabulary, then astronomy was the syntax, the rules that gave those shapes their profound meaning and purpose. Across the globe, our ancestors looked up, identified the predictable rhythms of the heavens, and then looked down to engineer those very rhythms into the earth itself, creating a permanent, unmovable record of time. This wasn't just observation. It was a form of encoding, a way to hardwire celestial knowledge into the landscape so it could never be lost. Perhaps no site illustrates this principle more beautifully than Newgrange in Ireland. This massive 5,000-year-old circular mound, older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid, is often called a tomb, but that label feels almost insufficient. Its true genius is revealed for just a few precious minutes on the mornings around the winter solstice. A narrow opening above the main entrance, known as a roof box, was engineered with incredible precision. As the sun crests the horizon on the shortest day of the year, a single, narrow beam of sunlight pierces this opening, travels down a 60-foot-long stone-lined passageway, and finally illuminates the central chamber in a dramatic burst of light that lasts for approximately 17 minutes before receding. This event is not a happy accident. It is the result of meticulous planning requiring a deep understanding of the solar cycle, precise engineering to achieve the correct alignment, and a powerful cultural desire to literally capture the sun at its weakest point to mark the pivotal moment of death and rebirth in the annual cycle. It's a stunningly elegant piece of architectural code, a single line of sunlight written in stone that delivers a message of hope and cyclical renewal every single year without fail. On the other side of the world, in the coastal desert of Peru, we find an ancient observatory so unique and explicit in its purpose that it rewrote our understanding of New World astronomy. The site is called Chanquillo, and it is not a single building but an entire hilltop complex crowned with 13 towers, standing in a neat north-to-south line. For over a century, archaeologists puzzled over its function. Then, in the early 2000s, researchers realized that these towers form an artificial horizon and function as a sophisticated solar calendar. From a specific observation point to the west, a viewer would see the sun rise at dawn in a different gap between these towers throughout the year. The sun rises at the extreme ends of the line during the June and December solstices and passes through the exact center at the equinoxes. This means that any observer without any specialized knowledge could determine the exact date within a few days simply by noting where the sun appeared. This is a democratization of astronomical knowledge, a public calendar built into the landscape that could have regulated agriculture, religious festivals, and trade for an entire society. It removes all doubt that these alignments were intentional and, most importantly, practical. This practical application is the key to understanding the hidden code. For ancient societies, tracking time was a matter of survival. Knowing when to plant crops, when to expect rains, when to move herds, or when to prepare for a harsh winter was essential knowledge. The celestial cycles provided the only reliable long-term clock. By encoding this information into immovable stone monuments, they created a perpetual almanac, a backup system for their oral traditions. A priest or elder could point to the alignment of a specific stone with a specific star and say, "When you see this, it is time to harvest." This turned abstract astronomy into concrete, actionable instruction. Yet, to view these sites as merely practical calendars is to miss half of their story. The spiritual and ritual significance was woven inseparably into their function. The dramatic light show at Newgrange was undoubtedly a powerful religious event, a moment where the veil between the human world and the divine was pierced by a shaft of sunlight. The precise tracking of Venus by the Maya, or the alignment of Egyptian temples with the star Sirius, whose heliacal rising predicted the annual life-giving Nile flood, show a worldview where the celestial and the terrestrial were intimately connected. The movements of the gods were written in the stars, and by building structures that mirrored those movements, humanity could participate in the cosmic order, ensuring balance, harmony, and continuity. The stones were not just clocks, they were portals, temples, and conduits, grounding the vast, incomprehensible mechanics of the cosmos into a tangible, earthly experience that guided every aspect of life, from the farm field to the temple altar. But to truly understand the purpose behind these celestial clocks and geometric patterns, we must move beyond their practical function and into the realm of philosophy and spirit, into the world of sacred geometry. This is where the stone language transforms from a mere code of survival into a profound metaphysical system, a bridge between the tangible world we inhabit and the invisible, divine order of the cosmos. Sacred geometry posits that certain shapes and ratios are not just pleasing to the eye. They are fundamental archetypal patterns that underpin the very fabric of reality, from the atomic to the galactic scale. Ancient builders weren't just using these forms, they were venerating them, embedding them into their most holy sites as a direct line to the divine. At the heart of this concept are a few key forms that appear again and again. Take the Vesica piscis, for example. This shape, which looks like a pointed oval, is created when two circles of the same diameter overlap so that the center of each lies on the circumference of the other. It's a simple construction, but its mathematical properties are profound. It generates the square root of 2, the square root of 3, and the square root of 5, all irrational numbers that are essential to geometry. For mystics and philosophers, this shape was far more than a mathematical curiosity. It was seen as the womb of creation, the first movement from the unity of a single circle into the duality of two, representing the moment of manifestation. You can find this shape echoed in the aura of light surrounding figures in Christian iconography, in the mandala of ancient sacred art, and it is the geometric foundation from which the hexagon, the pentagon, and ultimately the flower of life pattern can all be derived. It was a symbol of the generative principle of the universe, a secret hidden in plain sight within the proportions of countless temples and cathedrals. This idea of geometry as a divine blueprint was not confined to one culture. The philosopher Plato, in his dialogue Timaeus, described a cosmic geometry he called the world soul, arguing that the universe was constructed from 5 perfect three-dimensional forms, now known as the Platonic solids: the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron. He associated each with a fundamental element: fire, earth, air, ether, and water, believing these perfect, symmetrical forms were the literal building blocks of creation. This wasn't just philosophical musing. It was a serious scientific and spiritual theory that saw geometric law as the highest expression of cosmic order. And we see this philosophy made manifest in stone. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a textbook example, its dimensions and angles encoding not just pi and phi, but a host of other mathematical and astronomical constants. Its base perimeter divided by twice its height gives a close approximation of pi, while the ratios between its chambers reflect the golden ratio. This suggests the builders saw the pyramid not merely as a tomb, but as a microcosm of the universe itself, a model of harmonic principles designed to resonate with the order of the cosmos. This practice of encoding metaphysical concepts extends far beyond Egypt. In Hindu temple architecture, the entire design is governed by the principles of Vastu Shastra, a traditional system that dictates every measurement and proportion. The temple is conceived as a symbolic representation of the cosmos, and its construction is a sacred ritual. The central tower, or shikara, often represents Mount Meru, the mythical axis of the world. The floor plan is typically a mandala, a complex geometric diagram that serves as a map of cosmic energy and a tool for meditation. Every statue, every pillar, every corridor is placed according to precise geometric rules to create a space that is not just aesthetically beautiful, but spiritually potent, designed to elevate consciousness and connect the worshipper with the divine. Similarly, the intricate rose windows of Gothic cathedrals like Chartres are not just stunning works of art. They are massive, detailed mandalas of stone and glass, using sacred geometry to tell theological stories and to filter light in a way that was intended to inspire awe and spiritual revelation. This widespread, consistent use of sacred geometry across millennia and continents points to its true function as a universal language. It was a symbolic system that could communicate complex philosophical and spiritual ideas without words, transcending linguistic and cultural barriers. A master builder from India could look at a cathedral in France and, by understanding the geometric code, comprehend the underlying cosmological principles it represented, even if he didn't share the same religious beliefs. This language facilitated the transmission of esoteric knowledge considered too powerful or too sacred to be written down plainly across generations and vast distances. It was preserved in stone, passed down through guilds of masons and builders, and only fully understood by initiates who had been taught to read the geometric symbols. This hidden code ensured that the deepest truths about the nature of reality, humanity's place in the cosmos, and the principles of creation itself would be safeguarded in the most permanent way imaginable, waiting for a time when we might once again learn to see the world not just as a collection of separate objects, but as an interconnected whole, woven together by the invisible thread. Geometric harmony. Now, if geometry and astronomy form the language of this ancient code, then units of measurement are its grammar, the precise, consistent rules that give structure and meaning to the entire system. And nothing illustrates this point more astonishingly than the story of the megalithic yard, a discovery that suggests ancient builders from the foggy highlands of Scotland to the sun-baked plains of Egypt might have all been using the same ruler. This isn't a tale of vague similarities. It's a story of mathematical precision that defies easy explanation and challenges our understanding of prehistoric isolation. The central figure in this mystery was a man named Alexander Thom, a Scottish engineer and Oxford professor who, in the mid-20th century, embarked on a monumental task. With the meticulous eye of a scientist, he surveyed over 600 megalithic sites across Britain and France, using the most precise equipment available at the time. He wasn't content with rough sketches or general impressions. He took thousands of painstaking measurements of the diameters, circumferences, and spacings of these stone circles. As he crunched the numbers, a startling pattern began to emerge. The dimensions of these sites were not random. They weren't based on the crude approximations of a primitive people. Instead, they were built using a highly precise and surprisingly consistent unit of length. Thom proposed that this unit measured approximately 2.72 feet, or 82.96 centimeters, and he gave it a name that has echoed through archaeological debates ever since: the megalithic yard. What makes this so remarkable is the sheer consistency of its application. Thom found that this unit wasn't just used occasionally, it was the fundamental building block. The diameters of stone circles were often whole multiples or fractions of this yard. The perimeters of these circles frequently came out to an even number of megalithic yards. Even more intriguingly, Thom believed this master unit was subdivided into 40 smaller parts, which he called megalithic inches, allowing for a degree of precision that seems almost modern. This wasn't the kind of measurement you could achieve by using the average length of a chieftain's stride or the distance from a king's nose to his thumb. The consistency was too perfect, too mathematical, pointing to a standardized system that was shared across vast regions and over many centuries. The implications of this are profound. If Thom was correct, it suggests a level of coordination and shared knowledge that we simply don't associate with the Neolithic and Bronze Age periods. How could communities scattered across Britain, who we believe were largely isolated and tribal, all agree on and implement the exact same unit of measurement? Did itinerant master masons travel from site to site, carrying a standard measuring rod to ensure conformity? Or was this knowledge part of a much wider, perhaps even global, tradition? While the megalithic yard is Tom's most famous finding, he also identified a larger unit, 2.5 megalithic yards long, which he called the megalithic rod. He found that the spacing between stones within circles often corresponded to this measurement, and he even proposed a unit of time, the megalithic month, for their astronomical calculations. This points to a completely integrated system where measurement, astronomy, and geometry were not separate fields, but interconnected parts of a single, sophisticated worldview. The plot thickens when we look beyond the British Isles. While Tom's work was focused on Europe, other researchers have pointed to the possibility of a similar standard appearing in ancient Egypt. Some analyses of the Great Pyramid suggest that the royal cubit, the primary unit of measurement used in its construction, might bear a mathematical relationship to the megalithic yard. The idea that two such advanced and precise systems could develop independently and yet be potentially relatable is a tantalizing hint that these ancient builders might have been tapping into a universal constant, a natural standard of measure that was somehow known to them. Perhaps they derived it from astronomical observations, the pendulum of a star's movement across the sky, or a fraction of the Earth's polar circumference. This moves the discussion from mere construction into the realm of high science, suggesting that the stone circles were not just temples but also sophisticated observatories and repositories of geodetic knowledge. Of course, the concept of the megalithic yard is not without its passionate detractors. Many mainstream archaeologists remain skeptical, arguing that the evidence is statistical and that Tom might have been seeing patterns where none existed. They suggest that any group of people building large structures will inevitably converge on similar, human-scaled measurements. Yet, the mathematical rigor of Tom's surveys is difficult to dismiss entirely. Whether one fully accepts the megalithic yard or not, the evidence compels us to consider that the builders of these sites possessed a far more advanced and organized system of knowledge than we have traditionally granted them. This uniformity, this whisper of a common standard echoing across the landscape, points toward something truly extraordinary, a coordinated intellectual effort, a shared knowledge base, or a common source of inspiration that allowed these ancient cultures to encode their understanding of the world into a language of stone that was both locally sacred and universally consistent. Beyond the grand alignments and mathematical precision of these monuments lies another, more intimate layer of the ancient language, the countless symbols meticulously carved into rock faces and standing stones across the globe. These petroglyphs and pictograms are the personal handwriting of our ancestors, a visual vocabulary etched in stone that conveys everything from creation myths to star charts. While the massive structures speak to a shared architectural grammar, these carvings offer a glimpse into the individual dialects of cultures, each using this symbolic code to preserve their unique worldview for eternity. Consider the powerful, recurring motif of the spiral. On a Celtic cross in Ireland, it might swirl endlessly, a symbol of eternal life and spiritual journey. Carved into a rock in the American Southwest by the ancestral Pueblones, the same spiral form could represent the path of migration or a sacred portal to the underworld. In ancient Malta, the spiral decorates temple altars, perhaps signifying the cyclical nature of birth and death. This isn't mere coincidence. It's a profound example of how different cultures independently arrived at the same powerful symbol to express universal human experiences. The spiral's form, with no beginning and no end, naturally evokes concepts of infinity, growth, and inward transformation, making it a perfect intuitive glyph for the most fundamental mysteries of existence. But the language of stone carving goes far beyond single symbols. Often, we find complex panels that tell entire stories or encode practical information. A grid pattern chiseled into a stone in Scotland might look like a simple abstraction to the modern eye, but it could very well be a map of local farm plots, a chart of celestial constellations, or even a ritual diagram for community ceremonies. The famous Nebra sky disk from Germany, dating back over 3,600 years, is a stunning Bronze Age example. It's not a carving in stone, but it functions identically, using gold leaf symbols on a bronze background to depict the sun, the moon, the Pleiades star cluster, and arcs representing the horizon. It's a portable, sophisticated astronomical calculator and a symbolic representation of the cosmos, all in one. This demonstrates a leap from simple representation to a complex, coded system of knowledge. The subject matter of these carvings often points to their deeper purpose. Across the world, from the cave paintings of Lascaux to the petroglyphs of the American West, we see a fascination with animals. These aren't just hunting records, they are likely depictions of spirit guides, clan totems, or characters in elaborate mythological narratives. A carved stag might represent sovereignty and the forest, while a herd of bison could symbolize abundance and the great migratory cycles of life. By etching these figures into stone, our ancestors were doing more than decorating. They were anchoring their stories and beliefs to a specific place in the landscape, turning the entire world into a sacred text to be read by those who knew the code. This practice ensured that even without a written alphabet, the most important cultural knowledge, the stories that defined who they were and how they related to the world, would endure, passed down from one generation to the next as a living, visible testament to their identity. Just when we think we've grasped the full scope of the ancient stone language through sight and measurement, we discover a dimension that engages an entirely different sense: sound. The stones don't just speak to our eyes, they were designed to sing to our ears, to resonate deep within our bones. This is the world of archaeoacoustics, a field that reveals how ancient builders engineered their structures not just for visual grandeur but for specific sonic properties, adding a powerful, immersive layer to their hidden code. Consider the extraordinary Hal-Saflieni hypogeum on the island of Malta, a labyrinthine underground temple complex carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. This is no simple burial chamber. It's a masterpiece of subterranean architecture that includes a remarkable feature known as the Oracle Room. This small, egg-shaped chamber possesses an incredible acoustic phenomenon. If a person speaks in a certain pitch, particularly a deep male voice, the sound doesn't just echo. It resonates and amplifies, vibrating through the entire room and even the stone floor itself, creating an effect that feels both physical and spiritual. This isn't an accident of construction. The chamber was clearly designed to create this specific effect, suggesting that sound was a crucial component of the rituals performed there. A chant or a recitation could be transformed into an all-encompassing, visceral experience, making the spoken word feel as if it were emanating from the very earth, giving the voice of a shaman or priest an otherworldly authority that could profoundly alter the consciousness of those gathered. This intentional design extends across the Atlantic to the jungles of Central America. The Great Stepped Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza presents another stunning acoustic marvel. If you stand at the base of its massive staircase and clap your hands, the resulting echo doesn't just come back as a simple repetition. Instead, it returns as a piercing, chirping sound that uncannily mimics the cry of the sacred Quetzal bird, a creature deeply associated with the feathered serpent god Kukulkan, for whom the pyramid is named. This precise auditory illusion, created by the sound waves bouncing off the steep, uneven steps, is far too specific to be coincidental. The Maya engineers who designed this structure understood the physics of sound reflection and built this effect directly into their most sacred monument. It was a way of making the divine physically present, of hearing the god answer back each time a worshipper called out. blurring the line between the human and the spiritual realms through the power of engineered sound. Researchers like Paul Devereux have dedicated their careers to mapping these sonic landscapes. His work, and that of others in the field, suggests that sound was not merely an accessory to these ancient rituals. It was likely the central vehicle for achieving altered states of consciousness. The constant rhythmic drumming, the low-frequency chanting amplified by resonant chambers, the hypnotic drone of shells or horns, these sounds can directly impact brainwave patterns, guiding the mind into trance-like states of deep meditation or visionary experience. In this context, the stone structures acted as massive amplifiers and resonators, essentially functioning as the world's first audio technology. A temple becomes a giant instrument, tuned to specific frequencies that facilitate healing, communication with the spirit world, or communal bonding. The very stones themselves, through their density and shape, become active participants in the ritual, storing and releasing vibrational energy in a way that flat, open ground never could. This sonic dimension forces us to expand our definition of the ancient language. It wasn't just a silent code of geometry and astronomy. It was a multi-sensory experience. The message was not only seen and measured but felt and heard. The low hum resonating through a passage grave in Ireland, the sharp Quetzal call echoing through a Mayan plaza, the amplified chant in a Maltese oracle room, these were all part of the data stream. This sound-based layer of the code might have been used for healing, using specific frequencies to promote physiological and psychological well-being. It could have been used for long-distance communication across vast temple complexes, with certain notes carrying farther than others. But most profoundly, it was a technology of the spirit, a tool designed to modulate human consciousness and open a doorway to realms that our ancestors believed were just as real and far more powerful than the physical world they inhabited with their everyday minds. So far, we've explored how ancient structures speak a language of geometry, astronomy, and even sound. But perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of this code is its sheer scale. What if these sites weren't just isolated points of genius, but were instead deliberately placed to form a vast, interconnected network, a kind of planetary circuit board etched into the very crust of the Earth itself? This idea pushes the mystery beyond local alignments and into the realm of global geography, suggesting our ancestors possessed a sophisticated understanding of our planet's form that history has completely forgotten. The most popular, though controversial, framework for this concept is the theory of ley lines. The term was first coined by an English amateur archaeologist named Alfred Watkins in the 1920s. While riding his horse through the rolling hills of Herefordshire, he had a sudden revelation. He noticed that ancient sites, old churches built on pagan grounds, standing stones, ancient burial mounds, and holy wells, seemed to fall into perfect straight lines across the landscape for miles. He believed these were the remnants of ancient straight-line trade routes or pilgrimage paths, navigated by sighting from one high point to the next, and he called these alignments leys, from an old Saxon word for cleared glade. For Watkins, it was a practical theory about prehistoric travel and mapping, a lost system of dead straight tracks. However, in the decades that followed, the idea was seized upon by mystics and expanded far beyond Watkins's original, more grounded hypothesis. The concept transformed from ancient paths into hypothetical alignments of spiritual power or psychic energy. Proponents of this view began drawing lines not just across the English countryside, but across the entire globe, connecting the world's most famous ancient wonders. One of the most famous examples is the so-called Great Circle alignment. If you take a map and draw a great circle route, the shortest path between 2 points on a sphere, you can connect a stunning number of key sites. Starting at the mystical and remote Moai statues of Easter Island, This line arcs across the Pacific, touches the ancient Nazca lines in Peru, runs through the pyramid complex at Giza in Egypt, continues on to the ancient Persian capital of Persepolis, then to the sacred Hindu city of Varanasi in India, and finally ends at the great Angkor Wat temple complex in Cambodia. The precision with which this single line connects these culturally and temporally disconnected sites is, to many, utterly inexplicable by chance alone. But the question of how and why remains a profound puzzle. If these alignments are intentional, what possible technology or knowledge could ancient cultures have used to achieve such geographical precision over thousands of miles of ocean and continent? Some researchers point to the work of Charles Hapgood and his theory of ancient advanced cartography, suggesting that a lost civilization might have mapped the Earth with astonishing accuracy long before our accepted history. Others propose a more esoteric explanation, that these sites were deliberately placed on specific points of telluric energy, so-called Earth energies or dragon lines that ancient sensitives could detect. In this view, structures like stone circles or pyramids might act as amplifiers or stabilizers for this planetary energy, much like acupuncture needles for the Earth, designed to balance and harness these forces for the benefit of the land and its people. This would mean the global grid wasn't just a map for navigation, but an active, functioning system for managing the planet's vitality. A more scientific, though no less astounding, interpretation is that this network represents a form of ancient geodetics, the science of measuring the Earth. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, sits at the intersection of the longest land meridian and the longest land parallel, effectively making it the geodetic center of the Earth's landmasses. Its perimeter, when divided by its height, also gives a value that relates to the Earth's circumference. These mathematical coincidences are so precise that they seem to point to a deliberate encoding of planetary dimensions. This suggests the builders weren't just local priests or chieftains, they were global thinkers with a unified understanding of the size and shape of their world. They may have used this network for precise long-distance navigation long before the invention of the magnetic compass, perhaps by using the stars in conjunction with these fixed, known geographical points. Alternatively, this grid could have served as a sacred geography, a world-spanning pilgrimage route that connected centers of learning and spiritual power, facilitating the exchange of not just goods, but ideas, wisdom, and the very symbolic language of stone we've been exploring. Whether viewed as energy lines, trade routes, or a colossal stone map of the world, the implication is the same. Our ancient ancestors saw the Earth as a single, interconnected whole, and left behind a breathtakingly ambitious code in the landscape to prove it. This brings us to one of the most heated and fascinating debates in archaeology. How do we explain the stunning similarities in stone patterns found in cultures that were supposedly separated by vast oceans and thousands of years? Did this knowledge spread across the world from a single, forgotten source, or did different human societies simply arrive at the same brilliant conclusions independently? This question of cultural diffusion versus independent innovation lies at the very heart of the mystery, forcing us to reconsider the interconnectedness of the ancient world. On one side of this debate are thinkers like Graham Hancock, who propose a radical revision of history. Their argument, often called the diffusionist model, suggests that a highly advanced global maritime civilization existed at the end of the last ice age around 12,000 years ago. According to this theory, this mother culture possessed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and architecture. When a cataclysmic event, perhaps the comet impact Hancock often cites, precipitated massive flooding and climate change, this civilization was lost beneath the rising seas. But before they vanished, the survivors of this advanced society traveled the world by boat, disseminating their knowledge to the hunter-gatherer peoples they encountered. In this view, the similarities between Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids of Egypt, and the temples of Peru are not coincidental. They are the direct legacy of this lost common teacher, a forgotten chapter in human history that mainstream archaeology has simply overlooked. The precise astronomical alignments and shared geometric principles are seen as the fingerprints of this single source, a global curriculum taught to humanity in its infancy. The mainstream archaeological perspective, however, firmly champions the theory of independent innovation. This school of thought argues that humans, as a single species with the same cognitive hardware, are naturally inclined to respond to their environment in similar ways. Faced with the same fundamental challenges, tracking time, understanding the seasons, seeking meaning in the cosmos, different cultures developed parallel solutions. The appearance of pyramids in both Egypt and Mesoamerica is often explained through the simple, practical fact that a pyramidal form is the most stable and efficient way to build something very tall out of stone. The widespread use of circles and spirals can be attributed to their prevalence in the natural world, from the sun and moon to swirling water and climbing vines. This perspective sees humanity's artistic and spiritual expression as a series of convergent evolutionary steps where isolated groups, driven by universal human experiences, independently invented similar symbols and structures without any need for contact. So, how do we weigh these opposing ideas? The evidence is tantalizingly ambiguous. Proponents of diffusion point to the existence of ancient transoceanic trade routes that were far more extensive than previously believed. The discovery of cocaine and tobacco, plants native only to the Americas, in the hair of Egyptian mummies suggests that some form of contact across the Atlantic was possible. Similarly, the spread of the sweet potato from South America to Polynesia long before Columbus indicates that ocean voyages were happening. Furthermore, the sudden and simultaneous appearance of megalithic construction and agriculture in disparate parts of the world around the same time period could be interpreted as evidence of a new idea spreading rapidly. If people could exchange goods and foodstuffs, why not ideas, myths, and architectural blueprints? Yet, the case for independent innovation is equally compelling. When we look closely at the details, the differences between these ancient cultures are often as telling as the similarities. The pyramids of Egypt were primarily smooth-sided tombs for deified pharaohs, built with precise masonry. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia were stepped temples for the gods. The pyramids of Mesoamerica were also stepped platforms for temples, often used for human sacrifice, a practice not found in Egypt. The specific gods, rituals, and purposes attached to these structures were profoundly unique to each culture. This suggests that while the underlying engineering principle of a pyramidal shape might be a universal solution, the cultural meaning and application were developed locally. The human brain may be hardwired to recognize certain patterns and ratios as harmonious, leading to the independent discovery of the golden ratio in art and architecture across the globe, from the Parthenon to the works of Leonardo da Vinci, without any direct line of transmission. Perhaps the most satisfying answer lies not in choosing one extreme over the other, but in finding a middle path. It is entirely possible that a combination of both factors was at play. Isolated cultures certainly had the capacity for independent invention, responding to universal stimuli with uniquely human creativity. However, to completely rule out the possibility of any long-distance contact is to underestimate the curiosity and seafaring capabilities of our ancestors. The oceans were highways, not just barriers. Knowledge may have trickled along ancient trade routes, moving slowly from one culture to the next, being adapted, transformed, and reinvented with each new encounter. A symbol that began as a spiral representing the sun in one culture might be adopted by a neighboring culture to represent a shell, and then by a seafaring culture to represent a whirlpool, slowly spreading and evolving across continents over millennia. This would explain both the startling similarities and the distinct cultural variations, presenting an ancient world that was neither completely connected nor utterly isolated, but one where ideas could travel, mutate, and take root in fascinatingly different ways, leaving behind a global puzzle written in a language of stone that we are still striving to fully comprehend. Perhaps one of the most profound and personal keys to understanding this ancient language lies not in the stars or in measuring rods, but within the human mind itself. To grasp why a spiral or a grid might appear on a stone in Ireland and again on a rock face in the American Southwest, we must consider a universal human experience, the altered state of consciousness. Across countless cultures and millennia, shamans, mystics, and visionaries have used rhythmic drumming, psychoactive plants, deep meditation, or intense ritual to journey into non-ordinary reality. And from these inner voyages, they consistently return with a strikingly similar report. They have seen and interacted with a world of luminous, pulsating geometric patterns. This isn't a cultural artifact. It appears to be a hardwired feature of human neuropsychology, suggesting that the source of the stone language might be as much internal as it is external. The pioneering work of researchers like David Lewis Williams provides a compelling framework for this idea. Studying the magnificent rock art of the San people in South Africa, Lewis Williams, a cognitive archaeologist, noticed that the paintings weren't just depictions of animals and hunts. They were intricate, often chaotic scenes featuring human-animal hybrids, entoptic phenomena, which are the geometric visual patterns generated by the nervous system itself, and a powerful sense of movement and transformation. He proposed a three-stage model for the trance experience. In the first stage, the subject begins to see these entoptic forms, zigzags, grids, dots, spirals, and concentric circles, all flashing and vibrating in their visual field. As the trance deepens, the mind tries to make sense of these abstract patterns, interpreting them as culturally significant objects. A honeycomb might become a hexagon. A swirling vortex might become a spiral staircase or a tunnel. In the final, deepest stage, the individual often feels they are physically passing through this vortex or tunnel, emerging into a spirit world where they can communicate with ancestors or animal guides, an experience often depicted in art as a transformation or a flight. Now consider the implications of this for the global stone code. If a shaman in Neolithic Britain and a medicine person in ancient Peru both ingested psychoactive plants to achieve a vision quest, their brains, being human, would have generated the same basic geometric visual library. The spiral isn't just a nice shape, it is the neuropsychological representation of a vortex, a portal into the spirit world. The grid isn't just a pattern, it is the lattice of existence, the underlying structure of reality as perceived in an altered state. When these visionaries returned to their communities, they would have been compelled to translate these powerful, sacred visions into a permanent form. What better canvas than the most permanent thing they knew, stone? By carving these patterns, they were not just decorating, they were creating a tangible anchor to the spirit world, a permanent doorway that others could use, a map of the inner journey etched into the outer landscape for all to see and understand. This perspective beautifully explains the ubiquity of these symbols without requiring transoceanic contact. It wasn't that a culture in Egypt taught a culture in Mexico about spirals. It was that the human nervous system itself taught both of them. The stone carvings become less like an invented language and more like a direct transcription of a shared biological experience. This also reframes the purpose of the acoustic properties we discussed earlier. The resonant chambers, the echoing corridors, they weren't just for show, they were technologies of transcendence. The constant, rhythmic drumming at a specific frequency, the chanting amplified by a stone chamber to a deafening roar, could have been deliberately used to induce the very trance states that would allow participants to see these geometric patterns and journey into the spirit world together. The entire site becomes a machine for shifting consciousness, with the architecture and the art working in perfect harmony to facilitate a communal spiritual experience. This shamanic view connects the stone language directly to the most fundamental human quests for meaning, healing, and understanding. The patterns are a bridge. They are the meeting point between the material world we can touch and the spiritual world that our ancestors believed influenced everything. By carving the grid of the spirit world onto a physical menhir, they were bringing order to chaos, grounding the divine into the everyday, and creating a sacred geography where heaven and earth met. The language, therefore, is not one of simple communication but of transformation. It was designed not just to be read with the eyes, but to be experienced with the entire being, guiding the viewer toward their own inner journey and offering a glimpse into the luminous, geometric architecture of consciousness itself. This mathematical precision woven into stonework points toward an even more astonishing layer of the hidden code, the deliberate and accurate encoding of fundamental mathematical constants. These are not simple numbers, they are the irrational, infinite numerals that describe the very fabric of reality. Constants like pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, and phi, the golden ratio of approximately 1.618, often found in nature's most beautiful and efficient designs. The fact that these values appear with remarkable accuracy in monuments built millennia ago suggests a purpose far beyond mere construction. It implies a deep desire to embed eternal, cosmic truths into a permanent, physical form. The Great Pyramid of Giza provides the most famous and debated example. The pyramid's base perimeter, when divided by twice its height, produces a number incredibly close to pi, 3.1416. This is not a rough approximation. It is a relationship that would require the builders to have a sophisticated understanding of this mathematical principle long before it was formally defined in ancient Greece. The precision is so striking that it forces us to reconsider the pyramid's primary function. While it certainly served as a tomb, this mathematical encoding suggests it was also conceived as a mathematical monument, a permanent repository of geometric knowledge. Its dimensions seem to intentionally mirror a spherical concept, as if the structure itself were a representation of the northern hemisphere, scaled down by a factor of 43,200. This level of geodetic and mathematical integration points to a civilization that saw numbers not as abstract tools, but as the sacred language of the universe itself, worthy of being immortalized in their greatest architectural achievement. This practice of embedding sacred mathematics was by no means isolated to Egypt. Across the Mediterranean, the architects of the Parthenon in Athens appear to have designed the entire structure around the golden ratio. From the overall floor plan to the proportions of the facade and the precise spacing of the columns, the ratio of phi is repeatedly expressed. The result is a building that has been celebrated for millennia for its unparalleled aesthetic harmony, a beauty that seems to resonate on a deeply human level. This was no accident. The Greeks, particularly the school of Pythagoras, believed that numbers and geometry were the underlying principles of the cosmos, that the universe was mathematically ordered. By building the Parthenon according to these divine proportions, they were literally constructing a temple to this belief, creating a physical space that was in perfect harmony with the mathematical laws they believed governed everything from music to the motions of the planets. The building itself becomes a lesson in philosophy, a stone sermon on the beauty of mathematical order. The sophistication required to execute these designs cannot be overstated. We are not talking about simple measurements. Encoding pi into a pyramid's dimensions requires a conceptual leap from linear measurement to the abstract relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. Implementing the golden ratio across a complex structure like the Parthenon demands a masterful command of geometry and scale. This challenges the conventional narrative of a slow, linear progression of human knowledge. It presents us with an alternative possibility, that certain ancient cultures possessed a scientific and mathematical understanding that was both profound and holistic, viewing number, geometry, astronomy, and spirituality as inseparable parts of a single, unified cosmic system. Their monuments were the ultimate expression of this worldview, functioning simultaneously as places of worship, astronomical observatories, and eternal textbooks written in the language of mathematics, ensuring that this sacred knowledge would endure for millennia, waiting for a civilization capable of rediscovering its profound meaning. But the language of stone was not limited to abstract numbers and celestial mechanics. It was also the medium for humanity's most enduring stories. Long before the written word, our ancestors used the very landscape and the monuments they built upon it as a vast, three-dimensional storybook, etching their myths, legends, and cosmic narratives into the most permanent canvas they could find. These stone patterns and alignments were far more than decoration. They were a profound mnemonic device, a way to physically anchor their oral traditions to specific places, ensuring that the wisdom of the culture would not fade with the memory of a single storyteller. One of the most powerful examples of this comes from ancient Egypt, where the entire Giza Plateau can be read as a grand celestial narrative written in limestone and granite. The three Great Pyramids are not arranged randomly. Their layout is a precise terrestrial mirror of the three stars that form Orion's belt. This alignment is no coincidence, but a direct reflection of the Osiris myth, one of the most important stories in the Egyptian canon. Osiris, the god of the afterlife, resurrection, and fertility, was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set. After his wife Isis miraculously reassembled him, Osiris was resurrected and became the ruler of the underworld and the judge of the dead. The Egyptians believed that Osiris himself resided in the constellation they called Sa, which we know as Orion. By building the pyramids to mirror this constellation, they were creating a massive, imperishable gateway. The pharaoh's soul, upon his death, would undertake a spiritual journey to rejoin Osiris in the stars, and the pyramid complex was the physical launch point for that celestial voyage. The architecture itself tells the story of death and rebirth, guiding the soul through its mythic journey with stone. This practice of mapping mythology onto the physical world is a global phenomenon. In the cold climes of Scandinavia, the Norse people expressed a completely different, yet equally profound cosmological story through their stone settings. They often arranged massive boulders into the distinct shape of ships, known as stone ships. These were not burial mounds in the traditional sense, but symbolic vessels. In Norse mythology, the journey to the afterlife was a perilous voyage. The soul had to travel to Helheim or to the glorious halls of Valhalla, and a ship was the essential vehicle for this passage. By constructing these stone ships around burial sites, the community was providing the deceased with the means to complete their final journey. The stone outline was a permanent, indestructible vessel, ensuring that even if the wooden ship placed within it decayed, the symbolic conveyance for the soul would remain intact for eternity. It was a physical prayer, a story of passage and hope carved directly into the earth. This storytelling function of the stone language was absolutely critical for cultural survival. In an oral tradition, knowledge is fragile, held in the minds of elders and shamans. A single famine, war, or plague could wipe out the living libraries of a culture, erasing its history and identity forever. By encoding their core myths into the landscape, they created a backup system. The stones would always be there. A new generation could point to the pyramid and ask why it points to that star, and the elder would recount the story of Osiris. A child could ask about the strange ship-shaped arrangement of rocks, and the skald would tell the epic of the final voyage to the halls of the gods. The patterns served as prompts, triggering the recitation of the stories that defined who they were, where they came from, and what they believed about the universe. This transformed the entire world into a sacred text, where every hill, stone circle, and carved spiral was a paragraph in a grand, collective autobiography of humanity, written not with ink but with intention and awe. This deliberate encoding of knowledge in stone leads us to a crucial and often overlooked question. Why go to such extraordinary lengths to hide this wisdom in plain sight? Why not simply write it down or teach it openly? The answer lies in a powerful ancient concept, the idea that true understanding is not merely about acquiring information, but about undergoing a profound personal transformation. This wasn't knowledge to be casually read. It was wisdom to be earned, a hidden treasure map where the X was only visible to those who had done the inner work to see it. This philosophy was the bedrock of the famous mystery schools of antiquity, like the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece or the secret teachings within Egyptian temples. These weren't universities in the modern sense. They were more like spiritual boot camps. Initiation into these schools was a rigorous, often terrifying process designed to strip away the initiate's ego and preconceptions. Through rituals, ordeals, and guided revelations, the candidate was led through a symbolic death and rebirth. Only after passing through this psychological crucible were they deemed ready to receive the deeper truths. The intricate geometry of a temple wasn't just pretty architecture. It was a textbook for these initiates. The precise alignment of a corridor with the rising sun on the equinox wasn't just an astronomical feat. It was a spiritual lesson about balance and renewal, a moment of revelation that would only make sense to someone who had been prepared to understand its true significance. The architecture itself was the curriculum, and you had to walk through it both physically and metaphorically to graduate. This system of secrecy served several vital purposes. First, it acted as a protective filter. In an age where knowledge was power, literally, the power to predict seasons, to engineer cities, to understand the cosmos, this wisdom was too dangerous to be distributed freely. Falling into the wrong hands, it could be used for manipulation, control, or sheer tyranny. By encoding it in a symbolic language, the ancient masters ensured it would remain useless to a tyrant or a fool. A warlord could conquer a temple, but he couldn't force its stones to reveal their secrets without the key of understanding that came only from years of disciplined study and ethical development. The code was a safeguard, ensuring that the wielder of this power was also a person of character, someone who had been tested and proven worthy of such responsibility. Furthermore, this approach recognized a fundamental truth about learning, that some concepts cannot be fully grasped through explanation alone. You can describe the taste of honey to someone who has only ever eaten salt, but they will never truly understand it until they taste it for themselves. The mysteries of consciousness, the nature of the divine, the interconnectedness of all life, these are experiential truths. The symbolic language of stone was designed to trigger these direct experiences in the prepared mind. An initiate who had fasted, prayed, and contemplated for days would stand in the resonant chamber of a temple as the first ray of solstice sunlight struck a specific glyph. In that heightened state of awareness, the geometric pattern wasn't just a carving, It was a key that unlocked a direct personal revelation. The knowledge wasn't handed to them, it awoke within them. This made it infinitely more valuable and impossible to ever forget or to trivialize. This tradition of esoteric knowledge challenges our modern, information-saturated worldview, where data is free and instantly accessible. It suggests that the ancients valued depth over breadth, wisdom over information, and quality of understanding over quantity of facts. The hidden nature of the stone language wasn't about elitism in a negative sense, but about preserving the sanctity and power of a transformative truth. It was a way of ensuring that the most profound discoveries about the human spirit and the universe would not be diluted, commercialized, or weaponized, but would remain a living, breathing path of awakening for those willing to embark on the journey to find it. The stones were silent teachers, waiting patiently for students who were ready to listen not with their ears, but with their entire being. Navigating the world of ancient mysteries requires a careful and critical eye, especially in our modern age where information and misinformation spreads at lightning speed. The fascinating enigma of the global stone language has, unfortunately, become a fertile ground for a wide spectrum of interpretations, ranging from the rigorously scientific to the wildly speculative. It's crucial to develop a filter, a way to appreciate the genuine, awe-inspiring puzzles of the past without being swept away by compelling but unsubstantiated stories. This isn't about shutting down curiosity. It's about channeling it productively, honoring the true sophistication of our ancestors by demanding the same level of rigor they applied to their own work. On the solid ground of evidence-based research stands the respected field of archaeoastronomy. This discipline meticulously documents the astronomical alignments of ancient sites, using precise measurements, statistical analysis, and a deep understanding of cultural context. Researchers in this field don't just claim a stone circle aligns with the summer solstice sunrise. They spend years, sometimes decades, taking painstaking measurements to prove it, and then work to understand what that alignment meant within the specific belief system of the culture that built it. This is slow, careful, and often unglamorous work, but it has given us undeniable insights like the function of Chankilo as a solar calendar or the precise intent behind Newgrange's winter solstice light box. This is scholarship that deepens the mystery by revealing its genuine complexity, showing us that the truth is often more remarkable than any fiction. In stark contrast to this methodical approach are theories that, while incredibly popular and entertaining, often leap far beyond the available evidence. The ancient astronaut hypothesis, for example, proposes that extraterrestrial visitors provided the knowledge and technology for these great constructions. While it captures the imagination, this idea typically rests on a logical fallacy, the assumption that if we cannot immediately comprehend how something was achieved, it must be impossible for ancient humans and therefore requires an external, otherworldly explanation. This perspective, however well-intentioned, can ironically rob our ancestors of their full credit and ingenuity. It overlooks the vast and demonstrated capabilities of human intelligence, collaboration, and perseverance. The real story isn't about aliens giving us a handout. It's about humanity's own incredible journey of discovery, a story of resourcefulness that is, in the end, far more inspiring. The line between these worlds is frequently blurred by popular culture. Blockbuster movies, sensationalized television documentaries, and click-driven online content often take a fascinating archaeological fact and spin it into a narrative filled with dramatic music, selective evidence, and sweeping conclusions. A genuine, unexplained anomaly like the precise cutting of multi-ton stones at Pumapunku is presented not as an invitation to further study, but as definitive proof of a lost technology or outside intervention. This oversimplification does a great disservice to the public understanding of history. It replaces the nuanced, patient work of archaeology with a quick and easy answer, satisfying our craving for resolution but ultimately leaving us with a less accurate and frankly less interesting view of the past. The key to truly appreciating these ancient wonders lies in embracing a balanced, skeptical, yet open-minded perspective. It's perfectly reasonable to look at the distribution of the megalithic yard and wonder about cultural contact, or to ponder how the acoustic properties of certain chambers were discovered. The problems arise when wonder hardens into certainty without evidence. A healthy skepticism means asking tough questions. What is the actual evidence for this claim? Does it come from a peer-reviewed journal or an entertainment program? Are alternative, more mundane explanations being fairly considered? This doesn't mean shutting down imagination. It means using it responsibly. By adhering to this principle, we can marvel at the awesome achievements of Göbekli Tepe while still questioning the more extravagant claims about its purpose, allowing the genuine, evidence-based mysteries to shine all the brighter for our rigorous and respectful investigation. Even with our understanding of the symbolic and astronomical genius behind these sites, we are still left utterly humbled by the most fundamental and baffling question of all: how were they actually built? The sheer, raw physicality of these achievements defies easy explanation and pushes the boundaries of what we believe possible for ancient societies. We are not just looking at stacked rocks. We are confronting a global portfolio of engineering marvels that would be daunting even with modern machinery, leaving us to wonder if the very methods of construction were themselves a crucial yet lost part of the hidden code. Consider the most iconic example, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its construction involved quarrying, transporting, and precisely positioning approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. The average weight of these blocks is 2.5 tons, but many, like the massive granite slabs in the King's Chamber, weigh between 25 and 80 tons. These gargantuan stones were moved from quarries over 500 miles away. How did a Bronze Age culture achieve this? The conventional theory suggests gangs of workers used sledges, rollers, and immense ramps made of mud brick. While this is a plausible and often demonstrated method for smaller stones, the logistics of building a ramp sturdy and large enough to haul 80-ton blocks to a height of over 450 feet become a monumental engineering project in and of itself, one that some argue would have been almost as massive as the pyramid itself. The precision is another layer of the mystery. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within just under an inch across its entire 13-acre footprint. The four sides are aligned to the true cardinal directions with an error of less than 1/15 of a degree, a feat of surveying that is astonishingly accurate. This isn't just brute force. It is a level of precision that implies an advanced understanding of mathematics, geometry, and metrology that seems to eclipse the practical needs of a simple tomb. This theme of impossible precision repeats itself on the other side of the world. At Sacsayhuaman, a fortress complex overlooking the Inca capital of Cusco in Peru, we find a display of stonework that is simply mind-boggling. The site is famous for its massive, zigzagging walls constructed from enormous limestone boulders, some weighing well over 100 tons. The real wonder, however, is not their size but their fit. The stones are cut with such exacting, complex angles that they interlock perfectly without a single drop of mortar. The joints are so tight that, as the old saying goes, you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. This kind of precision, achieved on such an immense scale with nothing but stone hammers and bronze tools, is a profound puzzle. The shapes are not standard cubes or rectangles. They are polygonal, with multiple facets and angles that had to be custom cut on site for each individual stone to ensure a perfect fit with its neighbors. This process would be incredibly difficult and time-consuming even with modern laser-guided machinery. For the Inca, it represents an almost supernatural patience and skill, a mastery over stone that appears to soften it like clay. Faced with these seemingly insurmountable challenges, it's no wonder that alternative theories for lost technologies have emerged. One of the most fascinating and persistent ideas is that of acoustic levitation. Ancient texts and legends from various cultures, including Tibet and Egypt, speak of priests or wise men using sound, chants, or specific instruments to make massive stones weightless, allowing them to be moved effortlessly through the air and gently guided into place. From a modern physics perspective, the concept of using acoustic standing waves to counteract gravity and levitate small objects is a real, laboratory-demonstrated phenomenon. However, scaling this up to levitate multi-ton blocks of stone is a leap for which there is no physical evidence. While it remains a captivating idea that speaks to our desire for an elegant, almost magical solution, it currently resides firmly in the realm of speculation rather than historical fact. A more grounded, yet still advanced, theory involves the use of vitrification, somehow using heat or a chemical process to temporarily soften the surface of the stone to make cutting and shaping easier. Again, while intriguing, no definitive evidence or reproducible technique has been found to support this claim for the major megalithic sites. Perhaps the most compelling explanation, however, lies not in a single lost technology, but in a lost magnitude of human ingenuity, organization, and patience. We must remember that these projects were not built in a frantic rush. They were the central, multi-generational endeavors of entire cultures. A project like the Great Pyramid might have taken 20 to 30 years to complete. That is a timescale that allows for the slow, meticulous refinement of technique through trial and error. The knowledge of how to cut, move, and place these stones was likely a highly specialized trade secret, passed down through guilds of master masons. This knowledge would have been their most valuable possession, their stone language, and it may have been so practical and context-specific that it was never written down, only demonstrated and practiced. The methods themselves could have encoded profound principles of physics leverage, friction reduction, weight distribution, and teamwork. The use of log rollers, water-lubricated sledges, and counterweight systems demonstrates a sophisticated empirical understanding of mechanics. The precise quarrying might have involved using water to expand cracks in the rock or heating stones with fire, and then rapidly cooling them with water to cause controlled fractures. This perspective reframes the construction process from a mysterious, almost magical event into something even more impressive, a triumph of sustained collective human effort and intelligence. The building site itself becomes a university, a place where knowledge of physics, geology, astronomy, and logistics was not just applied but was constantly being advanced and refined. The act of construction was a ritual in itself, a physical manifestation of a culture's unity, purpose, and understanding of the world. The perfectly fitted stone at Sacsayhuaman is not just a building block, it is a testament to a generational commitment to excellence. The impossibly level base of the Great Pyramid is a monument to meticulous, patient surveying. In this light, the methods of construction were the most practical and powerful layer of the code. They encoded the knowledge of how to shape the material world through cooperation, persistence, and an unwavering respect for the laws of nature, leaving behind a permanent lesson in what humanity can achieve when it directs its collective will toward a single, awe-inspiring goal. Yet the true power of this ancient language lies in its astonishing resilience. its ability to leap across centuries and continents to whisper its principles into the ears of later builders, artists, and visionaries. The fall of the great megalithic cultures did not silence this code. It merely found new dialects, new mediums through which to express its timeless truths. The sacred geometry and harmonic proportions painstakingly encoded into stone circles and pyramids were not lost but were carefully preserved, passed down through secret guilds and intellectual traditions, eventually re-emerging in the most magnificent structures of the medieval world, the great Gothic cathedrals of Europe. Walking into Chartres Cathedral or Notre Dame is to step inside a three-dimensional textbook of the stone language. The soaring vaults, the intricate rose windows, and the precise layout of the nave are all governed by the same geometric principles that guided the builders of the Great Pyramid. The Vesica Piscis, that ancient symbol of creation born from the overlap of two circles, forms the fundamental blueprint for the cathedral's floor plan and the shape of its windows. The dimensions of the entire structure are often based on the golden ratio and the sacred numbers of Pythagorean geometry, transforming the space into a massive resonator designed to elevate the human spirit from the material world to the heavens above. The master masons who directed these projects were the direct inheritors of this esoteric knowledge, using their compasses and squares not just as tools of construction, but as instruments of spiritual revelation, proving that the language of stone could be translated into breathtaking new forms of beauty and devotion. This thread of influence pulled even tighter during the explosion of art and science we call the Renaissance, a period that consciously looked back to the classical world to rediscover its lost wisdom. Artists and architects became obsessed with the idea of divine proportion, seeing in mathematics the key to both artistic perfection and a deeper understanding of the natural world. Leonardo da Vinci's iconic Vitruvian Man is perhaps the most famous embodiment of this idea, a human figure perfectly inscribed within both a circle and a square, illustrating the belief that the human body itself was a microcosm of the universe's harmonic proportions. This wasn't just a beautiful drawing, it was a philosophical statement, a declaration that the same geometric codes that govern the cosmos were also present within us. Architects like Filippo Brunelleschi studied the ruins of ancient Rome not just to copy their style, but to reverse engineer their mathematical secrets. When he designed the magnificent dome for the Florence Cathedral, he employed a deep understanding of geometric stability and proportion, creating a structure that seemed to defy physics, much like the megaliths of old. The Renaissance was in essence a grand reawakening to the power of this ancient symbolic language, applying it to painting, sculpture, and architecture with a new fervor, believing that in doing so, they were not merely creating art but were participating in the divine order of the cosmos itself. This enduring fascination did not fade with the dawn of the modern age. Instead, it evolved, finding new expression in the most unlikely of places, the sleek, minimalist forms of 20th century modernism. At first glance, a building by Le Corbusier or a painting by Piet Mondrian seems to have nothing in common with a Neolithic stone circle. Their work appears stark, industrial, and purely functional. Yet, hidden within their designs is the same ancient pursuit of order and harmony. Le Corbusier developed his own system of proportions, which he called the modular. This was a scale of measurements based on the golden ratio and the dimensions of the human body, which he used to design everything from individual apartments to entire cities. He believed that using this system would bring a harmonious and human-scaled order to the modern world, a direct echo of the beliefs held by the builders of the Parthenon and the pyramids. Similarly, Mondrian's abstract compositions, with their grids of black lines and blocks of primary color, were not random. They were his attempt to create a universal visual language representing the dynamic equilibrium he believed underpinned all of reality, a pursuit of fundamental, geometric truth that would have been instantly recognizable to a shaman carving spirals into a menhir or a mason aligning a cathedral with the solstice sun. This unbroken chain of inspiration, stretching from the dawn of civilization to the present day, reveals something profound about the hidden code. It is not a relic of a superstitious past but a perennial philosophy, a deep-seated human intuition that certain patterns and ratios possess an inherent power, meaning, and beauty. The language was never about the specific stones themselves, but about the invisible principles they represented. It transcended its origins because it tapped into something universal within the human mind and spirit, a longing for order, a search for meaning, and a desire to connect our creative endeavors to something larger than ourselves. The medieval mason, the Renaissance artist, and the modern architect may have used different materials and worked under vastly different cultural assumptions, but they were all, in their own way, reading from the same eternal playbook. They understood that true creativity is not about inventing something entirely new, but about participating in an ongoing conversation with the past, translating timeless principles into forms that speak to the present, ensuring that this ancient, hidden code continues to shape our world, our art, and our sense of wonder in ways we are only beginning to fully appreciate. But what if the very endurance of this stone language points to a far more urgent and dramatic origin story, one not of peaceful contemplation, but of sheer existential survival? To shift our perspective, we must consider the world in which these early cultures thrived, a period of profound and violent climatic upheaval following the last ice age. Around 12,000 years ago, the Earth was emerging from a deep freeze. Vast ice sheets miles thick were melting, causing sea levels to rise catastrophically by hundreds of feet over centuries, swallowing coastlines and entire landmasses that were once home to human populations. This wasn't a gentle transition. It was a chaotic, planet-altering event marked by massive floods, volcanic eruptions, and rapid shifts in climate that would have challenged the very existence of early societies. In this context of global cataclysm, the impulse to build in stone takes on a radically new meaning. It transforms from a spiritual endeavor into a desperate act of preservation, a way to create an indestructible library for a world they feared might be washed away. This idea is powerfully echoed in the most persistent and universal myth found in human cultures across the globe, the story of the Great Flood. From the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh and the biblical tale of Noah to the flood myths of the Maya, the Aboriginal Australians, and the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, the narrative is strikingly consistent. A divine warning is given, a cataclysmic deluge engulfs the world, wiping out a previous civilization, and a select few survivors are tasked with repopulating the earth and preserving the knowledge of the past. The most famous iteration of this story is, of course, the legend of Atlantis, as recounted by Plato. He describes a sophisticated, advanced island civilization that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of misfortune. While often dismissed as mere allegory, the sheer ubiquity of these flood stories suggests they are rooted in a deep, collective memory of real, traumatic geological events. These weren't just campfire tales, they were oral history, a warning passed down through generations about the terrifying power of nature to reset human progress. And crucially, many of these myths contain a specific directive to safeguard the old wisdom. In this light, the global stone code begins to look less like a leisurely project and more like a contingency plan, a hard drive built to survive the apocalypse. Imagine the mindset of a culture living in the shadow of such a disaster or in its devastating aftermath. Their world has been literally turned upside down. Familiar coastlines are gone, fertile valleys are submerged, and the oral traditions held by elders are vulnerable to being lost with a single famine or conflict. How do you ensure that the most critical knowledge survives? You cannot write it on parchment or clay tablets. These will decay or shatter. You cannot trust it solely to memory. A single generation of trauma can break the chain. The only logical solution is to encode it into the most permanent, disaster-proof medium imaginable, massive, precisely arranged stone. The knowledge itself would have been carefully curated for survival and rebuilding. The astronomical alignments become a permanent calendar to restart agriculture. The sacred geometries and mathematical constants provide the foundational principles for engineering and construction. The geodetic alignments could serve as a permanent map for navigation across a changed world. Even the acoustic properties might have been designed to preserve the specific sounds and frequencies needed for healing or community cohesion in a shattered world. This theory adds a profound layer of urgency and intention to these monuments. They were not just temples, they were arks, not for saving animals, but for saving the accumulated wisdom of an age, sealed in stone against the floodwaters of time and disaster, waiting for a future civilization to crack the code and reclaim its inheritance. When we picture the builders of these colossal stone monuments, it's easy to default to a vision of muscular laborers, a male-dominated workforce heaving rocks into place under the harsh sun. This traditional image, however, is being dramatically reshaped by modern archaeology, revealing a far more nuanced and collaborative social tapestry. The creation of the stone language was not the sole province of any one gender or class. It was a communal symphony of effort, where every member of society likely had a part to play, contributing their unique skills and perspectives to this enduring project of cosmic and cultural significance. The most compelling evidence for this inclusive view comes not from the stones themselves, but from what was buried beneath them. Recent analysis of human remains interred at megalithic sites across Europe tells a fascinating story. At a monument in Spain, isotopic analysis of teeth from individuals buried within the structure revealed something astonishing. Some of them had not been born locally. They had traveled a significant distance, and crucially, these travelers included both men and women. This suggests that the knowledge required to build these sites, or perhaps the pilgrimage to participate in their construction, involved a diverse group of people. Furthermore, the grave goods buried with these individuals often defy simple gender stereotypes. While some women were buried with traditional domestic items, others were interred with finely crafted stone tools, ornamental jewelry that may have denoted high status, or artifacts linked to ritual practice. Similarly, some male burials lack the expected implements of heavy labor, instead containing items suggestive of artistic or spiritual roles. These burials paint a picture of a society where an individual's role was not strictly predetermined by their gender, but was instead shaped by their specific skills, knowledge, and perhaps even their personal spiritual calling. This evidence forces us to reimagine the entire construction process. Yes, the physical act of quarrying and moving multi-ton stones would have required immense strength, and it is logical that this heavy labor fell to those with the physical capacity for it, which often would have been men. But this was just one phase of a vastly more complex operation. The entire endeavor began with a vision, a concept that required deep astronomical observation, precise mathematical calculation, and sophisticated geometric design. Is it so hard to imagine that women, who are often the keepers of oral tradition, calendars, and herbal knowledge, might have been central to this planning stage? Their understanding of lunar cycles, which closely track with menstrual cycles, could have been invaluable for creating calendars. their role in sustaining life and community could have informed the very spiritual principles the structures were meant to embody. Consider the symbolic language etched into the stones, the spirals, the meanders, the intricate patterns. The creation of this iconography was an act of profound artistic and spiritual expression. The careful pecking and grinding of these symbols into unyielding rock required not brute force but patience, precision, and a deep understanding of their meaning. This was likely the work of skilled artisans, a role that could have been filled by anyone with the requisite talent and training, irrespective of their gender. The entire project would have also required a massive support network, organizing food and water for the workers, creating tools, managing logistics, and providing medical care. These are traditionally roles where women's expertise has been historically critical, though often rendered invisible in the historical record. To view megalithic society as a collaborative effort is to see the stone language not as a product of a top-down hierarchy led by a lone male chief, but as a genuine community achievement. It was likely built on a foundation of shared belief and collective purpose, where every contribution, from the heaviest lift to the most delicate carving, from the grandest design to the simplest meal, was understood as essential to completing this sacred dialogue with the cosmos. This inclusive perspective doesn't just add new characters to the story, it fundamentally changes the plot, revealing the hidden code as a testament to the power of diverse human collaboration. This profound connection we feel when standing before these ancient monuments goes far beyond simple curiosity or historical interest. It taps into something fundamental within our own psychology. There's a reason why a visit to Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid can leave a person speechless, overcome with a sense of awe that is both humbling and exhilarating. This isn't a modern, sentimental reaction, but a deep-seated human response to encountering something that transcends our everyday experience, something that environmental psychologists call vastness and accommodation. We are faced with structures that are immense in both scale and temporal depth, forcing our minds to expand in order to try and process them. This experience of awe is a powerful emotional state that has been shown to reduce stress, increase feelings of connectedness, and even make people more compassionate and ethical in their behavior. The ancient builders, whether they understood the precise neuroscience behind it or not, were master architects of human emotion, designing spaces specifically to trigger this transformative sense of wonder. This psychological impact is significantly amplified by the very geometric patterns we've been exploring. Our brains are hardwired to seek out order and pattern in our environment. It's a fundamental survival mechanism. When we encounter the perfect circles of a stone ring, the precise Fibonacci spiral of a carved decoration, or the unwavering straight line of a solstice alignment, our cognitive systems receive a powerful reward. This recognition of perfect order amidst the chaos of the natural world creates a deep sense of harmony and mental quietness. It's the same feeling we get from listening to a beautifully composed piece of music, where mathematical ratios of sound create emotional resonance. The stones are a form of frozen music, their geometric language speaking directly to our subconscious, inducing states of calm contemplation and a feeling that all is right with the universe. This isn't an accidental byproduct, it was the central intention. These sites were designed as therapeutic landscapes, sanctuaries where the human psyche could find respite from struggle and uncertainty and realign itself with the perceived cosmic order. This leads us to the most captivating psychological effect of all, the palpable sense of connection to the deep past. When you place your hand on a stone that was precisely positioned by another human being 5,000 years ago, a profound temporal barrier seems to dissolve. You are touching the same surface, standing in the same spot, watching the same sun rise over the same horizon. This triggers a powerful shift in perspective, pulling us out of our narrow concerns of the present moment and situating us within the vast, flowing stream of human history. This feeling, which psychologists sometimes term self-transcendence, diminishes the ego and fosters a powerful sense of belonging to something much larger than oneself. In a world that is increasingly digital, fast-paced, and focused on the immediate, these ancient places offer a rare and vital opportunity for temporal grounding. They are anchors in time, reminding us of our shared journey and our enduring human capacity for wonder, collaboration, and the pursuit of meaning. Ultimately, this reveals the true genius of the stone language. It was never meant to be read like a book or decoded like a simple cipher. Its purpose was far more profound, to be experienced. The alignment, the geometry, the sheer mass of the stones, all of it was meticulously crafted to create a multi-sensory experience that would bypass the intellectual mind and speak directly to the soul. It was designed to transform a visitor's state of being, to induce awe, to inspire contemplation, and to forge an unbreakable emotional bond between the individual, the community, and the cosmos. The message was not just in the stones themselves, but in the feeling they were engineered to evoke, a feeling of sacred wonder that would compel generations to protect these sites and preserve the wisdom they contain, not because they were told to, but because they felt it in their very bones. For centuries, the only tools available to unravel the mysteries of ancient stone were the human eye, a measuring tape, and a healthy dose of intuition. While these methods revealed incredible insights, they were inherently limited by our own physical perception and the sheer scale of the puzzles left behind. Today, we are witnessing a revolution, a seismic shift in our capabilities as a new suite of digital technologies begins to act as a powerful Rosetta Stone for the ancient world. This isn't just an upgrade. It's a complete transformation of the field, allowing us to see the invisible, measure the immeasurable, and connect dots across continents that were previously separated by the fog of time. At the forefront of this revolution is the technology of light detection and ranging, or LiDAR. This system, typically mounted on airplanes or drones, works by firing millions of laser pulses at the ground and measuring the time it takes for each pulse to return. By stripping away the dense canopy of forests, as was done spectacularly over the jungles of Guatemala, LiDAR reveals the ghostly imprint of human activity on the landscape. What appears to the naked eye as a simple hill is suddenly revealed to be a perfectly shaped pyramid. What looks like a random scatter of rocks resolves into a deliberate ceremonial complex. In this way, LiDAR is not just a mapping tool. It is a time machine, digitally peeling back centuries of overgrowth to expose a complete ancient city plan, complete with roadways, houses, irrigation canals, and defensive walls, all without ever lifting a trowel. This technology has been particularly transformative in regions like Mesoamerica and Southeast Asia, where it has doubled the known size of ancient Maya settlements in a single stroke, revealing a sprawling, interconnected urban landscape that completely rewrites our understanding of their civilization's scale and sophistication. But the digital revolution doesn't stop at seeing through trees. The ability to create hyper-realistic three-dimensional models of individual monuments has opened up entirely new avenues for analysis and preservation. Using photogrammetry, a process that involves taking hundreds of overlapping digital photographs from every possible angle, or structured light 3D scanners, researchers can now create a perfect millimeter-accurate digital twin of a stone circle, a carved menhir, or an entire temple facade. This digital model can then be manipulated in ways that are impossible in the physical world. A researcher in Tokyo can virtually rotate a stone from Stonehenge, examining the subtlest weathering patterns on its surface. They can run algorithms across the model to detect faint carvings that have been worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind, patterns that are completely invisible to the naked eye. They can even use virtual reality to step inside a reconstructed ancient temple and experience its acoustics or sightlines as they were originally intended, gaining an empathetic understanding of the space that blueprints and photographs could never provide. This technology also serves as a crucial form of digital preservation, creating an immutable record of a site's condition at a specific moment in time, guarding against the inevitable ravages of erosion, vandalism, or the tragic collateral damage of human conflict. Perhaps the most exciting development is the application of artificial intelligence to this vast new trove of digital data. The human brain is excellent at pattern recognition, but it can be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. AI, however, thrives on it. Machine learning algorithms can be trained to scour satellite imagery, looking for the subtle topographic signatures of buried structures, the slight rise of an ancient wall, the depression of a filled-in ditch. Projects like Global Explorer, founded by archaeologist Sarah Parcak, take this a step further by crowdsourcing the process. The platform allows millions of citizen scientists around the world to examine satellite images, effectively creating a global team of explorers who can flag potential sites for professionals to investigate on the ground. This has led to the discovery of thousands of new potential sites, from Roman villas to Peruvian geoglyphs. Furthermore, AI can analyze the vast library of known symbols and carvings from across the globe, searching for statistical patterns and connections that a single researcher might never notice. It can compare a spiral in Scotland to one in India, analyzing its precise curvature, number of turns, and associated motifs to determine if the similarities are merely coincidental or point to a deeper, underlying connection. This moves the research from descriptive analysis to predictive modeling, offering the tantalizing possibility that we might one day have an algorithm capable of helping to translate this ancient symbolic language by identifying its core grammatical rules. This fusion of technology is bringing us closer than ever to a holistic understanding of the ancient world's hidden code. We are no longer limited to studying sites in isolation. With GPS and GIS geographic information systems, we can precisely plot thousands of monuments on a global map and let the computer search for large-scale geometric alignments or correlations with geological features that would be impossible for a person to see. We can model the precise movement of the sun, moon, and stars across the sky 5,000 years ago and project that data onto a digital model of a temple to verify an astronomical alignment with pinpoint accuracy. The digital age is providing the tools to finally see the forest for the trees, to move beyond individual mysteries and begin to perceive the grand, interconnected network of knowledge that our ancestors worked so diligently to encode into the very bones of the earth. It is granting us the gift of sight, allowing us to read the forgotten language of stone not as fragmented whispers, but as a continuous, global conversation waiting for us to finally listen. This incredible technological revolution gives us powers of discovery that would have been unimaginable just a generation ago, but with this great power comes an even greater responsibility. As we stand on the brink of potentially decoding the ancient language of stone, we are forced to confront a profound and deeply human ethical dilemma. How do we balance our burning desire for knowledge with our duty to protect the very objects of our study? This isn't just an academic debate. It's a practical and moral challenge that plays out at every ancient site across the globe, pitting the noble pursuit of exploration against the imperative of preservation. One of the most immediate and devastating threats is looting. For thieves driven by profit, these ancient sites are not sacred repositories of knowledge, but simply treasure troves to be plundered. Using the very same satellite imagery and technology that aids archaeologists, looters can identify and target unexcavated mounds and temples under cover of darkness. They descend upon these places with shovels and saws, hacking away at walls to pull out carved fragments and tunneling into tombs to snatch burial goods. The damage they cause is catastrophic and irreversible. A beautifully carved stone removed from its original context is stripped of its meaning. It becomes a mere art object on a wealthy collector's mantle, while the world loses forever the chance to understand its relationship to the other stones around it, its alignment, and its true purpose within the larger code. This isn't just theft, it is the permanent erasure of entire chapters from the book of human history, all to feed a black market that values aesthetics over understanding. Even well-intentioned admiration poses a significant danger. The rise of global tourism, while wonderful for spreading awareness, brings millions of visitors to fragile ancient sites. The cumulative effect of countless hands touching a 5,000-year-old carving, of moisture from breath affecting the microclimate of a sealed tomb, or of vibrations from footfalls subtly shifting ancient foundations, leads to a death by 1,000 cuts. The iconic steps of the Mayan pyramid at Chichen Itza, for instance, have suffered such significant wear from countless visitors that climbing them is now prohibited. Managing this love is a constant struggle for archaeologists and site managers, who must build walkways, install barriers, and limit access in ways that protect the stones while still allowing people to experience their wonder. It is a delicate dance between sharing these treasures with humanity and safeguarding them for future generations. Perhaps the most complex ethical challenge, however, lies not in physical damage but in interpretation. For many indigenous communities around the world, these sites are not abandoned ruins. They are living, breathing sacred spaces central to their cultural identity, spiritual practices, and oral histories. When outsiders, however knowledgeable, arrive to study these places, they risk treating them as mere archaeological puzzles to be solved. They might misinterpret symbols based on academic theory, completely missing their deeper, ongoing spiritual significance to the descendants of the very people who built them. This approach can feel like a profound violation, a second colonization that seizes not land but cultural and religious heritage. The question of who has the right to tell the story of these places is paramount. Is it the academic with a doctorate or the community elder who carries the oral traditions that have been passed down for countless generations? The path forward must be one of collaboration and humility. The most successful and ethical research happening today is built on partnerships between archaeologists and local and indigenous communities. This means involving community leaders from the very beginning of a project, not just as hired laborers but as essential advisors and co-directors of research. It means listening to their stories and traditions not as folklore to be fact-checked, but as valuable datasets that offer unique insights no shovel can uncover. In some cases, it may mean agreeing not to excavate a particular sacred mound or not to publish photos of certain sensitive ritual symbols, respecting that some knowledge is meant to remain esoteric and not for the global public. This collaborative model transforms archaeology from an extractive industry, taking artifacts and data, into a reciprocal exchange of knowledge. It ensures that the process of decoding the stone language honors the living culture that is its rightful heir, protecting the wisdom of the past by respecting the people of the present. While the academic world continues its meticulous work, the idea of a hidden code etched in stone has exploded far beyond the halls of academia, capturing the global imagination through the powerful engine of popular culture. This fascination has given rise to some of the most beloved and enduring stories in modern entertainment, transforming dry archaeological theory into thrilling narratives of adventure and discovery. The quintessential example is, of course, the Indiana Jones franchise. Dr. Jones is the perfect bridge between the scholarly and the sensational, a respected professor who also punches Nazis and races against time to prevent ancient artifacts from falling into the wrong hands. These films, particularly Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, are masterclasses in weaving real historical mysteries: the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, ancient traps and booby traps, into a framework of high-stakes action. They present archaeology not as a slow, dusty process, but as a heroic quest where decoding the past can literally save the world. This dramatization, while far from realistic, has been incredibly effective in making the public care about ancient history, sparking a sense of wonder and curiosity in millions of viewers who might never have picked up an academic journal. The allure of this ancient mystery has found an even broader canvas in the world of video games, where players don't just watch the adventure, they live it. The Assassin's Creed series stands as a monumental example, building entire digital worlds around the concept of a precursor civilization whose advanced technology is hidden in plain sight within historical landmarks. Players can virtually free run across the perfectly recreated pyramids of Giza, explore the Parthenon in Athens, or scale the towers of Notre Dame, all while unraveling a conspiracy that ties these sites to a global power struggle. This interactive experience is profoundly engaging. It allows people to develop a tactile, spatial familiarity with these ancient wonders and their proposed alignments or hidden passages. While the overarching narrative of ancient astronauts and pieces of Eden is pure science fiction, the games are often painstakingly researched in their historical settings, introducing players to real figures, events, and architectural marvels. This fusion of fact and fantasy creates a powerful gateway, encouraging players to go online and research which parts of the game are based on actual history, effectively turning entertainment into an unintentional educational tool. This widespread cultural embrace is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it is an undeniable force for good. The excitement generated by a blockbuster film or a hit video game drives public interest, which in turn translates into increased tourism at historical sites and, crucially, more funding for legitimate archaeological research. People are inherently more likely to donate to causes that spark their imagination and make them feel connected to a grand, unsolved mystery. This popular fascination creates a larger and more supportive audience for the work of real-life archaeologists, who often find themselves explaining their findings to a public already primed with questions from their favorite media. However, the downside of this dramatization is the risk of creating a distorted public perception. When the line between fact and fiction is consistently blurred for dramatic effect, it can lead to the widespread acceptance of pseudoscientific theories. Viewers might walk away from a movie convinced that the pyramids were built by aliens or that there is a single, world-altering secret waiting to be found, rather than understanding that history is built on the slow, collective accumulation of evidence through patient study. Navigating this landscape requires a new kind of media literacy for the modern history enthusiast. The key is to appreciate these cultural works for what they are: incredibly creative and engaging stories inspired by real history, while maintaining a healthy skepticism about their specific claims. Instead of accepting everything at face value, use them as a launching pad for your own exploration. When a game like Assassin's Creed piques your interest in the layout of Renaissance Rome, seek out documentaries or books from reputable historians that explore the actual architecture and urban planning of the period. If Indiana Jones leaves you wondering about the Ark of the Covenant, delve into the fascinating historical and archaeological research on the ancient Israelites and the theories about what the Ark might have been. Popular culture provides the spark, but it is our responsibility to fan that flame with credible information, learning to distinguish the thrilling fiction from the often more complex, but no less amazing, reality of humanity's ancient past. Yet for all the incredible discoveries we have made, the ancient stones still hold their deepest secrets close. The most thrilling chapter in this story is not behind us, but ahead, waiting to be written by the next generation of explorers armed with tools we can barely imagine. The greatest breakthroughs in decoding this global language will likely come not from a single dramatic find, but from the convergence of seemingly unrelated fields, forging entirely new disciplines that can ask questions we haven't even thought to pose yet. One of the most promising frontiers is the emergence of neuroarchaeology, a field that bridges the gap between ancient material culture and the modern understanding of the human brain. We've discussed how altered states of consciousness might have inspired universal geometric patterns, but future research could take this much further. Imagine using functional MRI technology to scan the brains of experienced meditators and skilled artists as they are shown these ancient symbols. Could we identify a specific neural signature, a common pattern of brain activity that these carvings trigger? This could provide the first scientific evidence for a shared, biological response to these forms, moving the theory from intriguing speculation into the realm of demonstrable fact. Furthermore, by collaborating with contemporary indigenous shamans and practitioners who still use traditional methods to achieve trance states, researchers could document the precise conditions, the rhythms, the frequencies, the sensory deprivation that generate these visions. This wouldn't just tell us what they saw, it would tell us how they saw it, recreating the ancient mindset and potentially allowing us to experience a faint echo of the consciousness that designed these sites. On an even more fundamental level, the very act of construction itself remains a towering enigma. How were multi-ton blocks quarried, transported, and placed with such hair-raising precision? While we have logical theories, we lack definitive proof. The future of this research may lie in advanced materials science. Sophisticated sonic and thermal analysis could be used to scan the stones at a microscopic level, searching for residual evidence of techniques we've only guessed at. Are there minuscule crystalline changes in the limestone at Giza that could indicate it was subjected to a specific frequency of sound? Could chemical analysis of the rock surfaces at Sacsayhuaman detect traces of an organic compound, long since dissipated, that was used to temporarily soften the stone? The answers might not come from a larger excavation, but from a finer one, using spectrometers and electron microscopes to read the atomic history of these stones, looking for the faintest ghost of a tool mark or a chemical reaction that reveals a lost method of working with stone that borders on the alchemical. And then there is the tantalizing potential of what still lies buried, waiting for its moment in the sun. We have mapped only a fraction of the Earth's surface with the resolution needed to detect submerged or jungle-choked structures. As LiDAR technology becomes more affordable and widespread, and as AI algorithms become more adept at recognizing the subtle signatures of human engineering, we are on the verge of a great age of discovery. The coastlines swallowed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age, often called the real-life Atlantis, are now prime targets for underwater archaeologists using advanced sonar and submersible drones. These continental shelves, once dry land and home to thriving populations, could hold the keys to understanding the dawn of this stone-building tradition. Finding a single, well-preserved site on these lost lands could rewrite our entire timeline of human civilization, potentially providing the missing link that connects the megalithic cultures of the world. This is not a mystery that will be solved by archaeologists working alone in dusty libraries. The final deciphering of the stone language will be a symphony of collaboration, requiring the combined talents of satellite technicians, software engineers, neuroscientists, physicists, and indigenous knowledge keepers. It is a grand, interdisciplinary puzzle that invites everyone to contribute. The next great revelation might come from a programmer writing a new algorithm, a chemist developing a new method of residue analysis, or a storyteller remembering an old legend that suddenly makes sense of a peculiar alignment. The stones have been patient for millennia, and their final lessons are waiting for us to become sophisticated enough and perhaps wise enough to finally understand them. Yet after this grand tour of celestial alignments and lost civilizations, we are left with perhaps the most personal question of all. What does this ancient, silent language of stone actually say to us here and now, in our world of fleeting digital streams and instant gratification? These monuments stand as a profound counterpoint to our modern existence. In an age where information is abundant but wisdom often feels scarce, where we are more connected digitally yet frequently report feeling more isolated, the enduring presence of these stones offers a grounding chord to a deeper reality. They are a physical manifesto of patience, a quality in desperately short supply today. They remind us that the most meaningful projects, whether building a life, a community, or a sustainable future, are not the work of a single season but of generations. They challenge our obsession with the new and the now, asking us to consider what we are building that will truly last, that will speak across the millennia with the same quiet power as a simple circle of standing stones. This isn't just about nostalgia for a romanticized past. It's about extracting practical wisdom for our pressing present. Our ancestors, in their own way, were masters of sustainability. They worked with the grain of the natural world, using local materials, harnessing celestial energy for light and heat, and designing structures that have endured with minimal maintenance for thousands of years. In our urgent race to address climate change and resource depletion, their deep understanding of passive solar design, natural acoustics, and geodetic harmony offers a timeless lesson in working with nature rather than against it. The stone language is a testament to a worldview that saw humanity as an integrated part of a living, conscious cosmos, not separate from it or dominant over it. This perspective of profound interconnection is perhaps the most critical message we need to hear today, as we grapple with the environmental and social consequences of a more disconnected, extractive mindset. So what story will our generation leave behind? If our civilization were to vanish tomorrow, what would future archaeologists find in the layers we've left? They would undoubtedly uncover vast landfills of plastic, the ghostly digital traces of our social media, and the crumbling concrete of our infrastructure. But would they find evidence of a shared, uplifting purpose? Would they discover structures that speak of a harmonious relationship with the planet, or monuments to something greater than mere consumption? The ancient stone code pushes us to think in these epic terms. It invites us to consider our own legacy and what wisdom we would choose to encode for the future, if we too had only the most durable materials to convey our most important truths. What principles would we carve into a material meant to last 10,000 years? Would it be a message of warning, of hope, or of unity? Ultimately, the silent stones ask us to look up from our screens and remember that we are part of a much longer, grander story. They remind us that the human drive to create meaning, to seek connection with the cosmos, and to leave a mark that says, "We were here," is not a primitive impulse, but a fundamental part of what makes us human. In their quiet, steadfast presence, they offer an invitation to slow down, to contemplate, and to reconnect not just with history, but with something essential within ourselves. They challenge us to build, create, and live in a way that honors both our deep roots and our responsibility to the future, crafting a modern language of meaning that, though made of different materials, is just as enduring and profound. And so we find ourselves at the end of this journey, but truly it feels more like a beginning. We've wandered through the echoing chambers of Newgrange, felt the resonant hum of ancient stones, and traced the celestial alignments that connect the heavens to the earth. We've seen how a simple spiral carved into a rock face in Ireland can whisper the same symbolic truth as a pyramid slope in Egypt, and how a unit of measurement can span continents, suggesting a shared understanding that defies our conventional timelines. This tapestry of geometric precision, astronomical wisdom, and symbolic depth isn't just a collection of isolated curiosities. It is the compelling evidence of a forgotten dialogue, a global conversation held in the most permanent language our ancestors could devise. What these patterns challenge most profoundly is not just our timeline of history, but the very way we define knowledge itself. We live in an age of information explosion, where data is stored in fragile servers and becomes obsolete within years. The ancient builders thought in terms of millennia. They encoded their most vital wisdom, the cycles of the seasons, the motions of the stars, the principles of sacred geometry, the very stories of their souls, into a medium designed to outlast civilizations, to speak to us directly across the abyss of time. They challenge us to reconsider what is truly essential, what knowledge is so crucial that it must be preserved for 10,000 years. It forces us to look at our own legacy and ask what we are building, what we are creating that would endure, that would tell our story to a future we cannot even imagine. Let this exploration be more than just a fascinating diversion. Let it be an invitation to look closer, to truly see the world around you. The next time you visit an old cathedral, notice the geometry in the rose window. When you see a picture of Stonehenge, ponder the mathematics behind its circle. When you walk in nature, observe the Fibonacci sequence in a pine cone or a sunflower, and remember that these are the same patterns our ancestors saw, revered, and immortalized in stone. These ancient wonders are not relics locked away in distant lands. They are part of our collective inheritance, a testament to a universal human drive to seek meaning, to find our place in the cosmos, and to leave a message for the future. The greatest mystery remains unsolved, and perhaps that is the most beautiful part. The code is not yet fully cracked. New sites are being discovered with every passing year, and new technologies are giving us fresh eyes with which to see them. This story is still being written, and you are a part of it. Your curiosity is the key, so we turn it over to you. What do you think these patterns mean? Have you ever visited a site that filled you with a sense of awe and mystery? Share your experiences and your theories in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation together. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into history's greatest enigmas, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the unknown. Thank you for watching, and never stop seeking the hidden codes that shape our understanding of this incredible human story.